got lots left. Okay, next speaker is Addison Snyder and Tom Morris, and they're going to talk about looking for caves. Where?
All kinds of places.
All kinds of places. Addison, my eyeballs is the founder of Free Spring LLC, which means Limited Liability Company. An entry for hosting and promoting free and open source maps and cave diving information. He's been exploring both new technology and surface tools to find new caves. Today he will share with us the work that their team has been doing recently, discovering Sand Dollar Cave, which I don't even know existed. I'm about to find out though, right? And Tom will discuss the unique biology of that system. So you get to talk to Tom. Woo-hoo. Go ahead.
Yeah. Full disclosure, the Free Springs thing, nothing to do with Sand Dollar particularly, so.
I thought there was $10 in the wall.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
this Free Spring thing, nothing to do with that. Yeah. Don't do public speaking often. On the way here, I realized, I kind of prepare for it the same way I prepare for, diving, get the jitters out, drink a lot of water, make sure my buddy's there, stuff like that. So, thing is, main theme of this is that we are not out of Virgin Springs, and discovery is not dead. There's a lot of stuff out there to be found. Back in the 70s, you used to be able to walk around about 1,000 foot. That's a sinkhole, that you found something. But there is an ongoing search for these last ones out there, and what the old guard had in excess of these Free Springs, now we have a bunch of technology to kind of make up for the lack thereof. So, but they are still out there, and they're still precious, and they're still beautiful. So that's what the Sand Dollar system is. We found this in May, so there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different tools to find these things. Topography, satellite, data and statistics nowadays are more relevant than ever. This is mostly for people that haven't done this. I suggest everybody give it a shot. It's really fun. Property listings are huge. Oftentimes people brag about whether they've got a spring on their property when they're trying to sell it. Using a drone, again, more technology. They didn't have access to those in the 90s. Pretty good. And of course, you can contact your landowner directly now with cellular devices, everybody on Facebook, and mostly public information thanks to that sort of stuff. So give that a shot. Lots of door knocking though. Gotta actually get boots on the ground and do some field work. Oh, I forgot that. There's a lot of luck to it. Yeah, luck. As far as landowner relationships, it's important and responsible to land on the right foot with these landowners and not piss them off or lie to them or do rude things like trespass on their property. I'm huge into maintaining those good relationships, not only for the benefit of keeping these springs open to myself and others around me, but the overall community. So let's not screw that up by trespassing. Transparency and goodwill, just to start. Sometimes, when something is a death pit, don't use that as a term. I found, a little bit of advice given to me, but sometimes every time you contact them, every time you give them, every time you go out to a site, every time you interact with them, always have something new ready for them, whether it's a picture, whether it's a map, whether it's an update, whether it's oh yeah, we found this turtle shell and this, that, the other, and this could, always have something fresh, something positive every time you interact with them. I promise not all these slides have a bunch of text on them. It's the first 2 or 3. And then, of course, the ideal situation is to get a lease or to keep it open for others as well. So, yeah, that's the kind of ABCs of doing that. So, first sinkhole, when we found this stuff, was Mung. It was the bigger of the 2 on the surface, and I thought it was going to be the bigger of the 2 initially. It's a really big cavern system. Went in there, not too great a viz at first, and it took us a while to fully flesh that out, but it was a pretty small cave. We did see some cool stuff in there though. And it was a placeholder because I wanted to play this video. There's going to be a little my mouse will work. This is going to be a little interactive bit here. And I want you guys to see when you can find the alligator. So, Carrie found this alligator in here one day, and we didn't get a good video of it. And last time I went into this, it was my job to both survey what little line we had in there, and then hopefully find this alligator. So I'm looking around, probably a good 5 minutes. This is cut short. As after the survey work, I'm like, okay, where the heck is this? I've searched about 80% of the cavern, and at this point, because we were worried. Yeah. And I'm just like, woohoo! We got ourselves a gator. He's a beautiful sucker, too. His name is Fred. He's the resident alligator at Mung Sing. And, hello. So, that was a fun little experience at Mung. Where am I here? Control, function, F5. Love computers, love computers. But yeah, that was one of the more fun parts of Mung. So the cool part, Sand Dollar. Sand Dollar just mentioned a death pit. Probably about an 8-foot drop into water, and there's no real way to get out once you're in there if you don't have opposable thumbs. That first branch there, jumped in, freed over it to confirm there was an overhead, and then I had to climb out, sitting on that piece of wood there, and just scramble up. It was a lot of fun. Man, resolution doesn't really show up too well, but I promise you it's a beautiful sink. The main overhead's over there. Here's Carrie Spencer, Cameron Mahaffey, Tom Morris, and myself at the moment. In that picture. Eventually, as far as logistics getting in and out of this thing, like I said, we jump in and scramble out. We'd have to haul tanks out via rope, and that was quite a bit of fun. We've got Guy Bryant, Amy, I forget her last name, sorry. And then we eventually Tom Morris gave us a nice lab that we'd use to get out. That was really nice. But yeah, tossing tanks in or dropping tanks in and doing all that stuff. This is all about 600 foot into pretty heavy brush, and I am amazed we did not get bitten by rattlesnakes or otherwise maimed. We do have a small little dry cave section in there that we would kind of use to stage tanks, no pun intended. There's Carrie Fisher. Carrie Spencer. Carrie Spencer. Oh man. Carrie Spencer with that wonderful shit-eating grin as I'm pulling up all these tanks. And it's a ledge. And you don't want to fall in. And you can barely pull them up little by little. And heaven forbid you tap the edge of the thing with a regulator. People get really upset. I learned the hard way. And she's probably smiling her ass off while getting reamed out, you know? And, there's a picture of me just making a bunch of silt sticks for later. So we dealt with a ton of rain in this place. We were diving this during the summer for the most part, and it was rainy season, and there were hurricanes, and there was all kinds of stuff. And the trail out here is probably about half a mile to a mile of not road, not paved, not even gravel, nothing. It was just a bunch of brushland. And after about 4 or 5 goes around, in a Prius, is what I drove, mud got to about that thick. It's huge. And I got stuck once, but Cameron's Jeep saved me, combined with the climbing rope. Single-use climbing rope, by the way. So here's it's a death pit. Things that fall in, they will scramble around for a bit and eventually die. They'll drown. So there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of little tiny bones. There's all kinds of cool stuff right at that basin. There's a tons of human-made stuff in that basin. This is a box tortoise shell. I got a video I could play for that, but I'm curious how I'm time. And one of my favorite parts of the cave are the sheer amount of gator skeletons. They're just huge amounts. Like I forget the last count, 8, 10, somewhere around there. It's a lot. I lost count, kind of. But my favorite, one of my favorite parts about this cave, as far as the process goes, is as we were exploring, I made a personal priority to take a camera and camera lights and as we're exploring, as we're laying line, or on the second go-around, take perfect video of this virgin cave, because it's only virgin once. So take video of it in its pristine state, and we'll be able to hold ourselves accountable to the damage we have made on it, and then also other people can view it without necessarily going into it. But yeah, you can definitely tell this stuff is virgin, because if people knew about this, that would be gone, that would be gone, that would be gone. Lots of stuff would be destroyed. This is an extremely delicate cave. But yeah, that's just emphasis on that. One of the other cool things about this cave, kind of a minor note, is what Tom calls hoodoo hills. These are these really cool little mounds that form. I don't know how personally. You might have some theories, but they're pretty wicked. And again, you won't find that in a normal cave. You won't find that in Ginny easily, because people have disturbed them, and there's just dozens of those in there. And of course, the namesake, sand dollars. This is also a blank slide, because I think that only video will really do it justice. Sand dollars. Downstream sand dollars, how's that? So, again, this is pretty much for us. This is probably the dive immediately after we laid this line. And I'm taking this camera rig through these areas to scope out what the cave looks like immediately after we check it out. So I didn't realize it at the time. This little restriction right here eventually became the downstream side. And as kind of mark it mentally by pointing the camera there. But this is where we initially thought the cave was going to go, is this big little tunnel here that would get smaller and smaller and smaller. You can see just the sheer amount of sand dollars along the wall. And these seem to extend like little bits of beer bottle glass just all along the wall. And they're just so pretty, and they just fully flesh out the wall. And if you so much as tap the wall, they will break off. And so as I approach this, as we're starting to check this area out, I realized midway through this tunnel that, and I don't know why the words holy grounds came to mind when I was going through here. I very, very specifically remember that. I said, holy grounds. Turn the hell around. Get out of there. We are not exploring that, because it gets smaller and smaller. You would have to just seriously do some damage to the cave in order to push that any further. So we are responsibly diving this to preserve this stuff. And of course, we've got sand dollar on the left, on the right side, and this is a little area called I call brick house, because it's got this nice red girthite. I think it's girthite. Could be something else, but it's a small, rare-ish section of the cave where it's actually red. We've got tons of vertebrae in there. To the left, I don't know, that's about the size of the palm of your hand. Like that, put the palm of your hand inside this ridge of this vertebrae, and that's a big, big vertebrae. And then this is something Cameron found a couple weeks or a month ago. It's a big whale vertebrae, and that's really cool. I'm astonished by that. That's really wicked. And then another really, really defining cool feature of this cave is a big, massive clay wall that's probably about 4 or 5 foot tall. I've not been everywhere, so I can't really say with much confidence, but a lot of people told me that's the biggest clay wall they've ever seen underwater, and I think that's really cool. Very pretty. And then, of course, we found a ton of artifacts and a ton of other stuff in the water as well. This is a cow bone, where the femur kind of is. We found mason jars, and this really cool old hoe. I found that. Well, no, I'm sorry. Christy found that down there. But just lots of cool stuff. And then there's tons of little nearby sinkholes too. This one didn't go anywhere, but this like 4 foot drop, and there's just like the idea of, hey, there's a 4 foot drop, 2 by 2 foot. Clearly something made that drop, so that's kind of cool to think about. I mentioned deliverables with landowners. This is a very quick sketch early on, something I sent to the landowner. And this is the downstream side, and that's kind of where that video started off, and into crazy, crazy sand dollar world up there. But that's obviously been expanded a ton. Eventually we got to surveying, and I made this semi-crude contraption. I've never taken a survey course in my life, so bear with that. And I overlaid a KML over an area in Live Oak, just to give an idea for size. And that's about the size of the high school there. So this cave is the upstream side. There's about 4,200 foot of line in there. So this is pretty significant. We brought on Guy Bryant. Thank you so much, wherever you are. Oh, I was sitting with you guys. And that was absolutely amazing to take a part in both creating this, helping him create this, and then giving this to the landowner. It turns out landowner loves pictures like this, so who would have thunk? And then here's Mung Sink. So that's another pretty one. I don't know how I'm doing on the time, but gonna pass it over to Tom Morris with his biology segment. And like I said, it's one way in. How old are you?
77.
77. Holy crap.
That's me.
That is you, that's what I'm saying. You got some airtime.
Well, the first thing I want to do is thank Addison and Carrie and Cam for inviting me along on this whole thing. It's a unique find, actually. And
You got 2 minutes.
I thought you were serious, man. Don't give me a heart attack. It's my fault.
why don't you work that thing? I'll screw it up. I'll just say next time. Okay, we're going to talk about the biology in Sand Dollar Cave. The very first thing we noticed was black vultures. They had a nest underneath the overhang in the dry part of the cave, and several babies in there. We never really actually went in to see these guys because we didn't want to disturb them. But they were in there, and there was a bit of an odor associated with it. These guys didn't like it very much, but I thought it was actually kind of pleasant for some reason. Okay, next slide. We could call the black vultures are kind of casual visitors in the cave, and I've run into them in several places, right? Easing back in the caves, like around Mariana, and all of a sudden something's hissing at me. And there were black vultures in there with babies, and I thought it was an alligator at first, kind of scared the crap out of me. But anyhow, this is a yellow bullhead. All you cave divers see these a lot. And peacock slue, that's the main catfish. These are troglophiles. They come in and out of the caves. These catfish tend to be nocturnal in general, and they like to go into the caves in the daytime. If you go into Devil's Eye, and you know when you get towards the keyhole, but off to the right, there's a room I call the cat scat room out there. Devil's Eye is what we would call an oligotrophic cave. That means few foods. So you don't see a lot of cave animals in there. But the place I find when I go find them, the crayfish and so forth, I go to the cat scat room. These guys feed at night out in the river. They come back into the cave in the daytime. They hang around that particular spot, and they defecate. Hence the cat scat, right? And that's a food source for the cave animals. There's the cat scat. Okay, next. This is another troglophile, cave lover, right, but not cave dependent. This is the red-eyed chub or the spring chub. They love spring runs. They will go way back into caves. There's a place in Mariana where there's a room, it must be 1,000 feet back in. There must be hundreds of these guys in there. And in fact, there was a place where they were pulling bottled water out of a well, and they filled up a tanker truck and took one little dip with a cup to take a water sample, and they ended up with the fry of one of these guys in there. So, and those things are widespread in the aquifer. And this is Squirrel Chimney, west of Gainesville, and this is a real special place. There used to be a thing called the Squirrel Chimney Cave Shrimp. It's also the only cave we've got that has 3 caves that have 3 different species of cave crayfish in it. But next picture, and this is the cave adapted shrimp, and this is the only place it's ever known from. The Squirrel Chimney is the type locality. That's kind of a special place for biologists. That's where the very first place the animals were discovered, or a plant, and the descriptions are based on the specimens from the type locality. So everything else is compared with the animals from the type locality. Notice the eggs in the shrimp. Shrimp's transparent. Those eggs are much bigger than a very similar shrimp that occurs in the topside environment. Okay. And Pete Butt and I went out, and there was a threat of development around Squirrel Chimney. So the Fish and Wildlife Service hired us to go out there and do a survey of the cave, and we could not find the cave shrimp. And what we think happened is that these spring chubs have worked their way into the cave, and all they got to do is eat the babies, and before long you're not going to have any cave shrimp. So we think we may have documented extinction. Hard to document extinction, right? It's easy to say something's there. It's hard to say it's not there for sure. But these guys are probably gone. We looked at a lot of sinkholes around there. Couldn't find any of them. Okay, next. These are amphipods. You guys are familiar with these. Next. And this is the light fleeing cave crayfish. We've only got, this is the 17th site that we have where this guy occurs. If you look real close at his eye up here, you can see a little black spot. These guys have eyes. They're on stalks, kind of like crabs. But most of our cave-adapted crayfish, they have no visual pigment on the retina. And their optic nerves tend to be a scrambled-up mess. But this guy has that little bit of pigment there. And it's really, we have two species that have pigment like that on the eye. And they tend to occur near entrances. We think that they orient to an entrance, right, where they have a supply of food coming into the cave. You might have noticed when you're diving that sometimes you'll shine a light on one of these cave crayfish, like the pallid cave crayfish that's so common in Peacock Slough, and they seem to react to it. Well, they're not seeing it with their eyes, but as it turns out, crayfish have on the top of their back 8 cells that are light sensitive. They've also got back there on the tail 3 cells that are light sensitive. And whether these things are still operable on the cave crayfish or not, nobody knows. That was just something cool to kind of check out. So this is the 16th or 17th place that we found now that this guy occurs. So next. And this is the pallid cave crayfish. This occurs all the way from Suwannee County, Madison Blue, all the way on down to the bottom end of Alachua County. And this particular cave now is the southernmost location for the pallid cave crayfish. Next. And this is my favorite. This is Troglocamerus mcleani. This is the spider cave crayfish. To me, this is the most cave adapted of all the crayfish. Notice the long, thin legs, hence the name spider cave crayfish. And these antennae, if they were completely in the picture, they'd be out to here. There's really neat crayfish. These are called maxillipeds, and they are things that the crayfish handle food with. And you can't see it on this slide, but there are little bristles on those things. And what we think the bristles are for is for combing food out of the black silt. You always find these things where there's a lot of dark black organic silt. The spider cave crayfish. This is the 26th location we've got for the spider cave crayfish. They have the widest range of any of the crayfish in the state. They occur from Pasco County all the way up to southern Suwannee County. Okay, next. That's a close-up. You can see the bristles there on the appendages in the front of his head. Next. Let's talk about alligators. So, Addison's already mentioned the 8, 9, 10 piles of alligator bones in there. Next slide. I've been on kind of a quest for looking for records, for the depth records for alligators. This is the Alachua Sink over on Paynes Prairie. Back around the year 2000, I got a call from a biologist over there, and he said, Paynes Prairie is dry, the sinkhole's as clear as Itchituckney Springs, why don't y'all come on over and dive it? Well, it wasn't as clear as Itchituckney, that was a bit of a stretch, but Woody Jasper, myself, and a guy named Vince DeMarco went over, and there were no water hyacinths on the sinkhole at the time. It was just an open water. And there were probably 25 to 30 alligators in the thing. Well, we sat there for well over an hour just watching, right, to make sure there were no big guys. They were segregated by size. They were all 6 or 7 feet long. And I'm bigger than a 6-foot alligator, right? And size really does matter with these guys. So we went diving. The offices for the state park are right up on the hill. And all the secretaries came down to watch us get eaten by the alligator. They didn't cooperate. They were perfect gentlemen. But anyhow, the point here is this thing is 65 feet deep. There's a little cave at the bottom. I thought it was hydrologically inactive. Woody thought it might still be active. But there were alligator footprints and alligator tail drag marks on the bottom of this sinkhole, 65 feet down. So that's sent me on kind of a quest for alligator depth records. And next. So, polar bears. Jill Hyder's actually been diving with these guys. And the guy who was mentoring her, she's told her, put a lot of lead on your rig, because when one of these guys sees you, you're going to come at you, and they will come down after you. So you got to get down below 15 feet. So I think what's probably limiting them to 15 feet is the good old eardrums, right? They don't know how to do the Valsalva. But of course, it occurred to me that, on a good day, you don't need to pinch your nose to do the Valsalva maneuver. You can kind of work your jaw or just kind of, and your ears clear. You have to wonder if it's a real good idea to be diving with these guys. Maybe one would accidentally stumble on that. A lot of the moose have been down 16 feet, and that's as deep as they probably go. Same thing, eardrum problems. But a lot of these things like elephant seals that dive down to 2,000 meters, they've got all these adaptations, right, for not having ear problems. One of them is as their ear starts pushing in, there's a little bag that's full of fluid that expands and fills the inner ear canal and keeps the eardrum from pressing in. So pretty amazing stuff. Okay, next. So alligators, what I'm thinking, and this is just a hypothesis at this point, is that they can close up all the holes in their heads. Here are their ears right here, and they've got a flap that they can open and close. And I suspect that they're closing that thing up, and they can close their nose holes up, and they've also got a kind of a flap in the back of their throat that closes that up. So if they're eating things underwater, which they don't really tend to do, they don't take in too much water. You can drink water until you kill yourself. Alligators don't want to do that. But anyhow, so I think they're kind of like a submersible. They are sealed off so they can go really deep and not have to worry about pressure changes on the eardrums. And next. Oh, thank you, Paul. I've run into them face to face at 20 feet, 30 feet. I've got like 7 records, but the deepest record is right here at Hart Springs. If you go into the Black Lagoon entrance, you drop on down, and you're in the main cave. Well, there's a parallel passage out there with a pile of alligator bones. Now, these alligators are not dying and sinking down into the sinkhole and drifting into these locations. They're swimming back there. So they're doing really kind of like open water divers used to do in droves down here. They swim into the caves, they get lost, they end up drowning. So I've seen turtles do it. I've been Johnny on the spot with turtles, aquatic turtles, that all they got to do is round the wrong corner and they lose sight of daylight and they're done, or a cloud goes over the sun, right? So the depth record right now is 80 feet, and it's right here at Hart Springs. So who knows how far they can go. Kurt Bowen dove the deep hole down in the bottom, in the south end of Lower Mayaca Lake, and that's 130 feet deep. And he actually used a shark cage there. There are so many alligators. You can actually get on Google Earth and count alligators around this sinkhole. The last time I was there were 85 alligators. It's pretty remarkable. So they didn't use the cage to go down, but apparently they used it to come back up on their decompression. But I didn't get any info on alligator stuff there. There's a big hydrogen sulfide layer down there. But anyhow, the depth record is right here at Hart Springs now at 80 feet. And I reckon that's it. I think we're probably out of time. Yeah, we got 2 minutes, so if there's any questions, or Addison, or...
So are Hmong and Sandal, are they actually connected, or are these 2 separate systems?
We tried for a long time. It's obviously easier way in and out of Hmong in a lot of ways, so we were trying to connect that for a long time. Haven't gotten to it. And there's
close to each other relatively? Or?
They're about, I forget the number, they're about 13, 14, 1,500 foot apart, give or take. But we were looking for a connection for ages, and I don't think they personally connect. I personally don't think they connect in a passable manner. But we were looking for that for a long time because that would make our lives a lot simpler. And it also would explain a lot of the alligators down there. So we had a lot of debate about how the alligator skeletons got in. And it didn't, to me at least, seem feasible that they'd fall into the death pit sand dollar. We thought they'd go through Hmong, find a passage, lose their way, and then die. But I don't know. Jury's out on that, but I think we've scoured Hmong pretty well. There's a few small areas, but we're going to trash the cave or have some issues getting through this.
Did the landowner want any artifacts, like skulls?
I've offered a few. Short answer is no. There was actually a couple boar heads down there. I somehow didn't manage to get a picture of them, but there's a couple boar skulls down there. So I'm guessing local hunters used to find and hunt boar and then toss the bodies, or probably just the heads in there. So that's kind of interesting. But I found nails, bunch of random stuff. There's a bunch of old fence down there. You name it. It's pretty cool.
Let me mention something. Those alligators. Alligators are pretty darn mobile. And looking on Google Earth, there's a dozen wetlands within 2 miles of sand dollar, and they all look to be ephemeral, like they dry up from time to time. And these alligators will get up and move. Being a biologist, I get questions about alligators all the time. And what I used to say to people, they can show up anywhere at any time. And now I add any size to it. I was up in the Osceola Forest with a biologist by the name of Paul Moeller. We're looking for crayfish. And we come to a culvert on one of these endless grades in the flatwoods. And they always grub a little hole out on either side. The thing couldn't have been more than 15, 20 feet in diameter on each side. And Paul told me that he went by there a year back and done a turtle trap in. And these are big turtle traps, right? They can catch alligator snappers. And he said he came back the very next day and there was a 10-foot alligator with his head stuck in the trap. So this creek is like hardly even a creek. It's not hardly even real water. There's no big water for miles and miles. So you have to think, what was this guy doing out there? He had rolled around and wrapped the haul line around him. So Paul said, well, he's got his head in the trap. He can't hurt me. So Paul waded out and cut the string off of him. And he said, I got back on the back and pulled on the trap on one end. He pulled the other, and out he went. So
It's pretty wild. I think we're out of time, right, Shane?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey,